In this video, we're going to take a look at the sculpting tools within Carveco Maker Plus. Now, Carveco Maker Plus has two sculpting tools. The full suite is available in Carveco, but in Maker Plus you have smoothing and erase. Okay, now to access them, you can see this yellow sort of teardrop here, and if you hold down the mouse, the left mouse, then you can see there's an erase sculpting tool as well. Now, it doesn't really matter which one you go into, because if you select it, you also get the option to change here. And there's also shortcuts for this. So smooth, you can see, is 1, and erase is number 5. So if you press 1 and 5, it will switch between them. Okay, now what I'm going to do is use this quite basically to begin with. So let's adjust the radius to be really high, the strength to be really high. Okay, and I just wanted to show you what it looks like. So if I just start hovering over, left clicking, you can see it starts smoothing this relief. Now, as you can see, one of the things with using this tool is to be quite conservative with it. If you start smoothing really crazily, it makes the relief not look very good. Okay, now what I can do is to go back is to go and undo this through all of those steps that I've done. I'll show you another way that you can do this later, which is a little bit easier. So if I were to change the radius of that to bring it down, you'll see that the mouse pointer also gives me this spot. So it's basically a shadow of the tool that I'm using. So if I bring that up, you can see that the shadow becomes larger. So if I bring it down, and also what I would strongly advise is changing the strength. So if I zoom in and I use this at 100%, you can see it's basically smoothing off all of that texture that I have there. If I undo that, change the strength, maybe down to around about there, you can see it's just doing it just slightly. Now, even that is probably too strong. So if I undo that, and once more, and then let's bring it down to, let's say, about 4%. And then what you can do is do this really, really locally. Okay, and let's say the bottom of that leg, I want it to be quite smooth. Okay, you can do the same on this leg here. Okay, so you want to really use this quite conservatively, otherwise you'll just ruin your relief. Another thing to watch out for is if I adjust the strength, and let's say I'll go here. Now, I was guilty of doing this when I first started using the program as well, is that I was trying to use the smoothing tool to get rid of a lot of these edges on here. Now, one thing that you got to watch out for when you are doing that is that if I turn off the zero plane, you can see that these edges go down straight. Now, if I were to smooth these edges, you see how it creates sort of a glob of material at the bottom here. Now, this is probably not the best area to show you that. Let's try it here. Okay, so if I were to then try to machine this, it would actually create this radius when I tried to machine it. So just watch out for that, be a bit careful of that. If you've still got the zero plane on, you probably won't even notice that. So if I turn that back on, you may not notice that. So if I were to do it here, let's say, and that makes it look quite smooth, but if I turn off the zero plane, you can see that I've added this radius to the bottom of there. Okay, so that's just a word of warning, one thing to be careful with using this. So let's undo that. like so. So yeah, just keep this strength, be quite conservative with it until you're completely comfortable with using it. Okay. Now, there's also smoothness. So at the moment, I'm running 100% smooth. Now, me personally, I always keep this at 100%. If you bring that down, it gives you more of a straight brush. So if I were to try to do that now, everything is quite flat. Okay, and it will just go over there, and it's a definitive edge. Okay, now I don't normally use that because I don't really need to be honest, but you may need to do that where you need to get a definitive edge on there. So if I were to maybe undo that, and let's say that I wanted to just smooth out the whole of this branch. Now if I had that there on 100% smooth, and I tried to smooth that out there, you can see that it's smoothing out the tail as well. I wouldn't want it to do that. So if I undo that, let's just zoom in here, and let's drop the smoothness down to 0%, and then let's drop the radius down also. Now, if I were to do it now, you can see that I can basically stop it from going over there. Okay, and that's one way that you can just smooth out just that branch. Okay, so that's most of the time what you would use it for. So let's put that back up to 100%. Okay, now you've also got different behaviors. So at the moment I've got mode, which is normal. I've also got raise and lower only. Now, to be completely honest, these don't really work for the smooth because you're not raising the material up or lowering the material down. So I wouldn't really worry about these. These are more for another tool which is in Carveco, which is the deposit tool. You've also got scatter distance. Now again, I would just use this maybe for the erase tool if it's on there. Yep. So maybe use that for the erase tool. So I'll show you how that works in a moment. At the moment in smooth, wouldn't really use it because you wouldn't really see it. Okay. Now lazy brush distance, this one's quite useful. What this does is, let's say that I wanted to go around this eye, around the edge. So if I wanted to go around there. Okay. Now, as I'm doing this, you can see that I've got this circle following me around. Now, sometimes if you're doing this with, let's say, a mouse, you may be a little bit jittery. Okay, so it may be not following the circle correctly. The lazy brush basically follows behind you and it smooths out those transitions as you're going around it. If I were to make that, let's say, 0.5 inches, you can see that it's following me around. Okay, now that's probably a little bit too much, so let's undo that and let's make it, let's say, 0.1. And you'll see that it follows me as I go around. Okay, now this is quite hard to show you on a video without you actually getting the feel for it. It's basically giving you an offset and it's sort of a delayed reaction, and it's basically smoothing it as it goes round, and the program's automatically doing it for you. You've also got mirror in X and mirror in Y. Now, what this does is, if I were to mirror in X, select there, basically it's mirroring over on the other side. Okay, and exactly the same thing in Y. So let's undo that and let's turn that off. Now you've also got a mask, so you can do this under a colour or excluding colour. So if you've got an area that's actually a colour, you can tell the smoothing tool to not smooth over that area. Okay, now obviously you need to have that set up as a bitmap or an image so you can overlay it on the top and it wouldn't sculpt over that area. So let's say, for instance, I take a plan view of this, and let's turn on the 0 plane, and let's just draw, let's say, a circle there over that eye. Okay. Now, if I go to the 2D view and just take a look at this, let's change the color to be, let's say, red. Go to bitmap, and I'm going to flood fill vectors. Okay, so I've got a red area. So if I go to the 3D view and then let's display the bitmap. Okay, so you can see that I've just got this red on the eye there. Okay, now if I go back to the material just so you can see it, let's open up the smoothing again, and this time you can see that the colour, because it's the primary colour, has changed to red. Okay, and then I can do either undercolour. So if I do undercolour, let's change this radius and the strength so you can see it. So undercolour basically smooths off that colour. When it gets to the edge of that red, it won't smooth anymore. So if I try to smooth over here, it won't do it. So if I undo that and then go excluding colour, it will smooth over here, but when I get to this red area, it won't let me do it. Okay, so it's basically telling me that I can't do that bit. Okay, so that's what that mask is, the colour. So let's undo that. Let's turn it off, so it goes back to none. Then the material safety plane is quite useful. So before I showed you that I was smoothing off this area here, like so. Okay, and then I turned off the 0 plane, and you saw that I've got this massive amount of bleed going over the edge, and it would actually machine this. Now, what we can do is use a material safety plane. So if I undo that and turn that on, and let's make this 0.01 inch, so let's say 10 thou, and then I try to do it on there now, what happens is when this gets to 10 thou, that's as far as I can go. Okay, so it won't actually let me go 10 thou deeper. Okay, so it won't let that bleed over the height of 10 thou. So if I undo that, and let's try it at, let's say, a thou, you can see that it's letting me go over a little bit more. If I take it back to, let's say, 0.1, let's say, for instance, try to do that, you can see that it's got this line at the top, so that's 0.1. So let's try it at 0.05. 0.25. And then that's at 5 thou. Okay, so that's how you can basically limit how far that bleed comes over. Okay, so let's undo that, like so, and I'll turn off the material safety plane. Okay, so there's also the sculpting session section down here. Now, let's say that I start smoothing. I'll just change this radius and make it really strong just so you can see this. So let's say that I start smoothing that, and I don't want to press undo because every time that I select somewhere, it becomes an undo state. Okay, so if I undo once, it will go back once, undo again. So every time that I let go of that mouse, it becomes an undo action. Okay, so I'd have to keep on going through all of these to get back to where I wanted it to be. Okay, now let's say that I do something, let's say like that. So I'm pressing the mouse quite a few times here. Okay, so I've done that probably about 10 times. Now, if I don't want to select undo, what I can do is select revert. This will go back to the start of my sculpting session. So if I press revert, it will take me all the way back. Now what you can also do is have a snapshot. So if I change the radius and the strength, and then let's say I just wanted to create some stuff here. Let's say smooth this out a little bit like so. Just make it look a little bit more organic. Okay, so I've done quite a bit of sculpting there, and I'm happy with that at the moment. I think that looks quite good. Let's take a snapshot of that. And then I can carry on. Let's do here. And let's say that I change the strength and the smoothness. And you can see that I've carried on doing this and made a bit of a mess of it, okay, because I've gone crazy with it. Now, let's say that I wanted to go back to the place that I was happy with. What I could do is go to revert again, but this time, because I've taken a snapshot, it goes back to that snapshot that I'd taken in time. So if I click revert again now, you'll see that I've still got the sculpting on the top of here. So if I select revert, you can see that this, let's turn that down so you can see that this is still smoothed in certain areas. Okay, so you got that snapshot that you got to fall back onto. Now you can also go back through past that snapshot by doing undo. And then this will undo, and it will allow you to go back past that snapshot. Okay, now this is just the smoothing tool. There's also display settings. So if I come down here, you've also got show tool outline. So if I click that and turn up the radius, it gives me an actual outline of the tool rather than a shadow of the tool. Okay, so that tells me exactly where it's going to go. You can also turn that back off there. You can also tell it that you don't even want to see the tool. And then you can also hide tool mid-stroke. So when I left click, it actually doesn't show the tool. So I can see what I'm actually doing. If I turn that off and then left click, it still shows the tool. Okay. Now, personally, I don't like that on because I want to see what I'm doing. So if I revert now, it will go back to the snapshot that I'd taken earlier. Right, so let's take a look at the erase tool. So let's move this up. Let's take a look at the erase tool. Now this works pretty much in exactly the same way, except it's removing material. So if I go to a large radius, let's say, and a large strength, and left click, what happens when you first start using it is it doesn't work. Okay, now the reason for that is under behavior. Now this, when you first start using it, is always set to erase to snapshot. Okay, and you don't want that. You want to erase to baseline. Okay, so if you change that and then select it, you can see that you can erase parts of this. Okay, and you can just hover over it and start erasing. Now again, this probably should be used with only a little bit of strength, and then it becomes a really, really useful tool. So if I revert that again and drop the strength down, start clicking on there, you can see that even with that strength drop down, it's still taking off quite a bit, and you can change the height of release by doing this. Okay, now if I revert that again, and let's change the strength to be quite high, and let's change the radius. I want to show you what this scatter distance does. So if I change the scatter distance to be, let's say, 1 inch, and then click, you can see what's happening is that it's erasing, and it's basically scattering the brush in random areas over this 1 inch distance. Okay, so it's quite useful for actually creating your own sort of texture. So let me revert that again, turn off the scatter distance. The lazy brush and mirror exactly the same thing. Also, the mask is exactly the same thing, and snapshot and revert. Now, where this becomes handy is, let's say, for instance, recently done a wavy flag and just done it on a square that I created. So let's take a look at using that on something like just basic sort of shapes. So if I turn on the 0 plane, take a plan view, I'll just draw a rectangle there. Let's delete that circle from previous. And then let's go to the shape editor, just do a plane, height, let's say 1 inch, and apply and cancel. Okay, so that's brought that up by 1 inch. And I'll just delete that, and I'm going to not display the 0 plane, so it's a bit easier to see. Okay, so I've just got this block that I've created. So if we go to the erase tool, and then let's change the radius to be about there. Strength, I want to bring this down to, I don't know, maybe about 5%. Come down like that. And you can see that you can sort of create all these folds in here. Okay. So you can create some really nice reliefs by using this tool. So you only want the strength to be just a little amount. Okay. Now it's also quite useful if you want to bring down an area so it fits with another relief. So if I close that and let's open a drawing that I'd done previously. Okay, so here you can see this Pegasus. Let's put my 0 plane on. And I'm going to import some sort of scroll. So let's go to my reliefs. Let's import this scroll. So previously I've done this using the fade relief tool. Okay, but what I want to do is drop this down. So I want to drop it down by using the erase tool. So let's take a look at that. Doesn't look too bad. Maybe let's bring that down to there. Okay, so there you can see that I've pasted this scroll down, and you can also see the Pegasus is actually cutting through the scroll. Now, doing it like this, because I haven't got relief layers, won't help me. Okay, so if I were to go to the erase tool now and then try to erase any of this, it's going to take the whole thing down. So it's taking that scroll with it as well. So this is where you have to sort of think about things before you actually do them. So what I need to do is undo that and do it prior to pasting it down. Okay, so if I leave that there and just not worry about it for the time being, go back into the erase tool and maybe drop the radius down, let's say to about there, and then start bringing these down. Okay, so I'm just clicking on them. And the good thing about the clip art being in blue is that it's already what we call merge high. So it shows you what it's going to look like after it's pasted down. So I don't need to paste that down yet. And I can do the sculpting with it in place. Okay, so that looks okay. Let's take a look at the tail here. Okay, now you notice how I'm not moving the mouse. I'm just clicking on it, because if I were to move the mouse to there and then start clicking, it would take a whole larger portion out. I just want to keep it there, so then it just takes just a little amount off each time. Okay, and then maybe move to there. Let's take off a bit of this. So every time I'm clicking on this. Okay, so just keep on clicking until it brings that out. Okay, so that looks okay to me. So let's rotate around. That looks all good. So when you're happy with that, maybe let's get rid of that there. Okay. So this is really, really useful for sort of localized sort of blending in of reliefs. So when you're happy with that, let's close that and then go back to the clip art, and then you can paste it down. Okay, and that way you don't need to fade the relief out, and you don't lose all of this detail down here. You've just basically erased most of it in here. Okay, and it's sort of blending in a little bit better as it goes into it. Okay, so let's take a plan view of that, and you can see that that's blending in quite nicely. So that's how you use the sculpting tools within Carveco Maker Plus.